Vanessa Brenner, it's great to see you. Brenner, Vanessa, whatever I call you, whatever nicknames I have for you. Brenna, I wanted to come and spend a few minutes with you, congratulate you on Delima Counseling Group, and to see you ladies together, working together and doing the great work that I've seen you do together in residential treatment is going to be a really, really cool thing for me.
Yeah, super exciting.
Yeah. And I've watched you work with families in an incredible way for a long time. And so here's a question for you. When we're talking about families and patients that are struggling with addictions, and the patients are in treatment, right? They found their way to treatment. You've seen family programs. You've been part of them. You've run family programs. So if you had the opportunity now to create, your own family program, what do you think families need when they have a loved one in addiction treatment in a residential environment?
Well, the number one thing that families need are support. Addiction, the disease of addiction is very much in the shadows when, families they won't talk about it. So the most important thing is that families lean on some type of support, whether it be through Al-Anon, whether it be through the family programs that, some substance use facilities offer, so that they can be with other families to know that they're not alone.
That's huge, right?
Yeah, it's probably the biggest thing.
They feel that they're alone. They feel that they're the only ones going through this, and the guilt and the shame, and how do you get them through that? I mean, you've done that. How do you get families? How do you build that support around them, other than the mutual support groups that you mentioned, which that's fantastic. But what else can you do as a therapist in private practice to help build that support around families?
Well, I mean, it's always, looking towards some type of self-help, but also, asking another family who's gone through something and has found some type of peace and serenity, and being able to connect people together, or to connect family members together. And you'd be surprised how many family members have been through, have a loved one who has the disease of addiction, would be willing to speak to another family member. That way you start connecting, and then potentially, a family member might take the step into walking into something like an Al-Anon meeting.
Yeah, and I think, like you said, you have a family member that helps another family member, that gives them the opportunity to be paying it forward and giving back to other families, and it feels good. It helps them with their program.
Absolutely.
You, when we work together, I know that you've had other experiences in other programs. What got you into the work that you do, and why is it that you're so into it and passionate and compassionate about the work that you do?
Well, I mean,
because you get cranked up. I've seen you in action with families, and you get, yeah.
Well, number one, I myself, am an alcoholic, and so I have struggled with the disease of addiction for the majority of my life. My partner is a former heroin addict. He's in recovery as well, and my family never really recognized the signs of my alcoholism, and so my battle went well into my adulthood. So the fact that family members are willing to reach out for support and try and figure out the muddy waters of addiction and recovery, gets me really excited, because it was something that wasn't afforded to me. But more interesting is, my partner who went through a program in his early 20s, and his parents showed up at the family program, did the family program at the facility he went to, and then they went home and they didn't really follow up on anything. And so when we've talked about his experiences, he's told me that probably the thing that hurt him most is the fact that his family never followed up on any type of support or treatment post a 2-day family program. So I feel pretty passionate about it, because I feel like the more support the family receives for something like this, the greater the odds that the person struggling with the disease of addiction is going to be successful in arresting their addiction.
Yeah, so his deal was that he was doing his part, he was working his program. His family went to the family program and then either looked at it as, well, this is your problem, we're not, it's not our problem.
Right, exactly. Right? Like, it's hard work on both sides, but that's exactly what happened. He went through a 90-day program. He went to a sober living home. He got himself what they call a recovery job, which is, a minimum wage type job. And he went to his meetings. He focused on his recovery, and his parents went home. And till this day, you can kind of see some of the old behaviors that creep out in his family system, such as enabling and.
Yeah. So you were part of a three-pronged approach, four-pronged sometimes, to working with families in residential treatment. You've seen the good, the bad. So if I give you the magic wand and I say, Vanessa, you can create now your own family program, because even up here at Delima Counseling, you guys may get to the point that you're all working with clients and you say, hey, you know what? We should probably bring some of these families in together and do a family program. That's going to be on you. So you're looking at me like it better not be on me. That's going to be on you because that's what you do and that's what you're good at. If you could wave the magic wand and say, if I can create my own family program, this is the way I would do it, what would that look like?
Oh my gosh. It would probably be like a once a week type meeting. I would always recommend that a family go to the family program where their loved one is receiving substance use treatment. Mm-hmm. But if I could create my own, it would be like a group for families every week.
At least once a week.
Once a week to come, to check in, to talk about their struggles, to talk about their triumphs. Absolutely.
So you're talking about like family group psychotherapy.
Yes. That would be amazing.
What about the education part and all that?
Education doesn't always initiate change. Mm-hmm. It's more about experience. Mm-hmm. So being educated and having the education is amazing, but you can be educated by reading a book, by reading a good book. It's more about learning from other people's experiences, and that is the parallel process where a loved one struggling with addiction, sure, I can sit home and read a book about the disease of addiction, but it's not going to initiate change. What initiates change is being around others who struggle with the same things, figuring out what works for some people and what doesn't work for other people.
So you're talking about the power of group psychotherapy with families working together and living through or sharing their lived experiences.
And that's the complete opposite of what the disease of addiction does, which is isolates. Right? Families become isolated. They don't want to go to family events. They don't want to go out in public and answer questions about their loved one and why their loved one isn't at the, the Christmas dinner or Thanksgiving dinner, because they're home under the influence somewhere. Yeah. So the opposite of addiction, and I'm sure you've heard this many times, is connection. And so having a group working together, learning from each other, there are a lot of things that can
and
can
staying
happen
connected, right?
Absolutely.
And staying connected outside there.
Right. And having other people to talk to about what is going on and realizing that the disease of addiction is predictable. It's 100% predictable.
So we have messages coming in from texters, audience so here's a question from one of them. They say, what conversations do families need to have to prevent the disease of addiction before it comes into their home?
Well, there are a lot of factors there about having preventative discussions. I think about like what this is going to look like in my own home one day.
You have a 7-year-old child?
Yeah, I have a 7-year-old girl. And, both of her parents struggle with the disease of alcoholism and addiction. And I think we're going to have to sit her down and say, this is who we are. This is a genetic disease. Mm-hmm. It's a progressive disease. And if you choose to pick up beer at the age of 15 or whatever it's going to be when she turns 15, that you are genetically predisposed to addiction. It is highly likely that you will struggle with this disease at some point. So, the other thing I've always wanted to tell, that I'm waiting to tell her, is that, I'm willing to do anything to support you, right? But I'm not going to allow you to go down that slippery path, because I'm not supporting that in any way.
I'll support your recovery, but
right,
I'm not gonna...
right. So I will not support you, emotionally. If you choose to go down that path, I'm not supporting you financially. Like, we're not going to do that in this household.
So you plan on having that conversation?
Yeah, it needs to happen. And even as I sit here, I'm going to have to literally sit down and map it out. But she needs to know one day what addiction is. She needs to be educated on it. And then we can have a deeper discussion about, what she's going to choose to do when she's 12, 13. God, I hope it's not 12, but
Right.
13, 14, 15 years old. 15 years old was when I first picked up a drink. And
Why'd you wait so long?
I don't know. It wasn't offered to me, that's why.
How have the families that you've worked with benefited from that group psychotherapy process?
So in facilitating family programs, one of the programs I facilitated was 4.5 days long. Sometimes when the families were leaving the program, they were so comfortable in that room that they didn't want to go home. And to me and the rest of my colleagues, that was like the ultimate compliment, is that they felt so comfortable and safe in being able to talk about what their struggles have been that they didn't want to leave.
Remember, I shared this with you. There was a family that you had worked with that was a family that I knew from Chicago, and they were super skeptical about doing the family program. And they did it, and in the end they sent, father was a physician, and he said, this was absolutely amazing. I'm glad you insisted that we did it. There is a God, and he lives here at this place within these therapists and the work they do. So, yeah, if you ever question, the work you do, is it worthwhile? It's so hard. I'm exhausted. I mean, you've impacted a lot of lives. You said something a couple of minutes ago about, we know that connection is the opposite of isolation, and disease. Addiction is a disease of isolation. Can you give an idea of why is that? Why is addiction a disease of isolation?
Well, I think it really comes down to shame. Who wants to be seen in less than favorable light, right? So when you're impaired and you're addicted to alcohol, for example, and you're disheveled, you don't want to go out. You don't want to be around people. There's also a hiding, the hiding that you do when you're an alcoholic. You sneak things, you sneak drinks, right? And so you don't want anybody to really know what's going on with you. And so you kind of live this lonely lifestyle, or a lifestyle of solitude, because you just don't want anybody to really know, like, I'm drinking 3 drinks in my home before I go out to dinner, so I can have 2 drinks there, and then I can come home and have 3 drinks. Right, so you don't want anybody to know. So you become very evasive. I think that's part of isolation.
Living in your own head. And
Yeah, and then the shame of, I'm not doing the right thing, or my life is spun out of control. And most of us have our pride and our ego, and we don't want to damage that in any way.
Yeah. Why would you? This is the last question I'm going to ask you. Is knowing, I shared with you about Prospect Hill being a 7-bed, high-end executive level program in the Caribbean on St. Croix, and a place that no one knows the address of until you're coming there, because we have people that come that don't want anyone to know that they're in treatment. Why would you consider sending somebody that you're working with to a program like that? What do you think they're going to benefit from being in that type of program facility?
Well, depending on geographically, somebody from the state, somebody from, the mainland going to St. Croix, you have distance, right? which, you know, a lot of people check into treatment and immediately want to leave.
Yeah.
So you're kind of in this secluded place. But I love the idea of 7 beds because you would get so much individualized attention, an individualized treatment plan, which is very important. So you have a lot, I'm sure clinicians would have a lot of time to address
That's exactly right.
the issues at hand, because it's not always just the addiction. There are underlying issues such
Yeah.
as anxiety, depression, bipolar disorder. So I love that idea of having 7 beds.
And a very intense, thorough evaluation
Yeah.
at the first 5 to 7 days to be able to really figure out what you're going to do.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Yeah, and there's, you know, a big need in this world. There's those people that if you didn't have that, they wouldn't go to treatment.
That's true too. A big place that has 30 some odd beds could be very overwhelming for somebody.
Yeah, they don't want to be seen.
Yeah.
I want to say thank you to you, Vanessa, helping us and participating and the work that you do helping families. And I shared with you before we started filming a couple of text messages from a family that you helped me help.
Yep.
And their son is celebrating 4 years of continuous sobriety, got his degree from the university, and it's a completely different family. And they mention you every time I talk to them.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Always a pleasure.
Likewise.